What's going on, everyone? Ryan F. and Miles here with a gameplay analysis. I've got a match here against Kazmat, who is Taylor S. from the round one of the New Frontiers OLS, and I thought it was a really good match. We do end up playing a full 3 games, but so we're going to play this at 2 times speed, so the gameplay might move a little bit fast, might pause around a couple times, but I just want to get right into it. What we have here is going to be my variant of Atom Seikhart. It is a mostly Zeus Alice focused build, and just getting a lot of value out of that and just doing efficient things otherwise. And my opponent is playing an Arthur deck, and we'll kind of, I don't want to spoil too much, I'll kind of go through my thought process as the game was going on, and just kind of go from there. So without further ado, let's get this started. And once again, the gameplay is at like 2 times speed, so we should get through this pretty quickly. I might need to pause it a couple times. So when did I roll? So I go first. Gonna just go ahead and call a stone with Atom Seikhart. And I already did my mulligans before I started recording, and my hand is just not looking super good. I kept an Arondight because against Arthur, there's a decent number of automatic abilities that I felt like I might want to deal with, and with double Acolyte of the Sun, I think even if he's like a Makoto deck, then I can awaken an Arondight on like turn 2 if I hit double blue, and it just didn't end up panning out with the redstone here. So he does play Shadow of Kronos, so I'm already afraid of harvesting season into a scrap and rebuild if he is playing like blue-black machines with the combo. So we'll see what happens. But because I played Acolyte on 1, I get to Whispers on 2. Just draws me a Light of Raze and Revive and Kaguya. And again, I just have really nothing to do here. I've got Seal of Lenneth, but it doesn't do anything against the Shadow of Kronos because it has Barrier. Looking at my rune deck, just kind of thinking, like, is it worth just gaining 1,000 life, like, at the end of his turn to be efficient? Do I want to play an Acolyte of the Sun right now? Just kind of get it out there. Am I vulnerable to Sandstorm? I don't really know what my opponent's playing, so that's something to consider when you just don't really have any information whatsoever. My opponent instead just goes ahead and uses his Shadow of Kronos to take a peek, look at the top card. I think he keeps it on top, and then next turn is where we see exactly what's going on here, because we do have the harvesting season come down, and then it's kind of a matter of, okay, well, where do we go from here? And again, my hand isn't looking super strong. It has a lot of interaction, so if my opponent does start playing some scary things that I need to either use Seal of Lenneth on or Light of Raze and Revive, I've got options. I've still got Zeus's Grand Lightning in my rune deck. Nothing too scary except for exactly Motoko or Makoto. I always say Makoto because I think of Makoto Nagano from Ninja Warrior, and that's always my go-to when it comes to just the way that card is, the letters that exist in that card's name. But I'll probably get it wrong 7 more times as the stream goes on, even though I now know it's Motoko. So he goes ahead and mills here. I take a peek. We see double Makoto in the discard, and he only has 6 machines. So we do see Kaguya and Perfect Loki in his discard zone as well. So we do kind of get an idea of what's going on here. He isn't playing a full suite of machines, so he does miss on the turn 2 Makoto. And at that point, when he doesn't use Shadow of Kronos again to try and get number 7, I'm starting to think that because he has so much extra cards in there, because he has the Perfect Lokis and the Kaguyas, that he might only be playing like 2 Makoto in his entire deck, and he might have just hissed them. And he said feels bad like in chat, so I'm kind of getting a read there on like what's going on. So at the beginning of my turn, I top deck Dark Alice, and I try and play that before going to recover, just to be as efficient as possible. With 5 mana coming up, I do have the opportunity to play Youkai Festival with the Stone of Omniscience, because that'll cost 5. It'll cost 4 to get the Zeus Alice normally, but because you can use Stone of Omniscience to pay for the green, it would cost 5. But he actually goes ahead and uses his Energized Arondight my Dark Alice, just trying to keep me off of 5-color will, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think that's a pretty valuable resource to throw at a Dark Alice, when Dark Alice really isn't netting any card advantage. And here we don't want to actually flip our ruler, because we don't want our opponent to know that we're thinking about flipping. And because we're really bad at Force of Will, we just go ahead and look up what our ruler does and just kind of remember what all 3 of his abilities are to make sure that we have like a pretty complete understanding of what we could do. Because with how bad our hand is, there's a reasonable argument to just J-activate here, and then start like gaining life, or just making sure he can't like kill our Acolytes with something. And we're like, you know what, no, it's just totally not worth it. Even like giving Zeus Alice or Zeus's Grand Lightning quick cast for the rest of the game doesn't seem like a bad option. But ultimately, I'm like, you know what, I really need a blue source for my Arondight, so let me go ahead and call a stone, make it a blue stone, but of course it's a red stone. So that's kind of where that line of thinking went. So we have Light of Raze and Revive, Kaguya is not online, we have Seal of Lenneth, but our opponent hasn't played anything super scary. Here's an opportunity for him to play Lancelot, but I wasn't going to use Seal of Lenneth on the Clockwork Girl just to stop a Lancelot from having exactly 1 trigger on it. Like, I just wasn't worried about it. With Shadow of Kronos just kind of sitting there, threatening the 7th machine to hit his discard, I'm trying to look as threatening as possible, like I have as many options open as possible, even though I really couldn't deal with the Makoto if it came down right now. So I just end my turn. My opponent just ends his turn? No, he's just thinking, sorry. And he's going to go ahead and play March of the Dead off the top. Thinking about awakening it. We have Lancelot. No, March of the Dead is not Lancelot. It's Perfect Loki and Arthur. So he's just going to go ahead and do it for one. Could also grab Shadow of Kronos, but it's unlikely. I think he does go for just the Arthur here. Maybe not. Perfect Loki makes a lot of sense too. I think Perfect Loki is what he goes for. Nope, targeting Arthur. So he just pays one to grab the Arthur here. Just kind of get his card draw online. He's going to bring out the Arthur. I think that's like that's the reason this deck is Arthur instead of Perfect Loki. I think it might be a little bit better as Perfect Loki because of the threat of the J activate, but Arthur's not bad either because it gives you the card draw. So Perfect Loki lets you play one extra card a turn. Arthur lets you draw one extra card a turn. So that's kind of the difference between what I guess these two kind of lists would be doing. So he goes ahead and uses the Arthur ability to give himself a Zeus's Grand Lightning counter, which will give him barrier from Zeus's Grand Lightning, so I can no longer remove it with Zeus's Grand Lightning. Of course, it did enter the field with 6 counters. It does not. It does enter the field, I think, with 6 counters. It does not like have any. There was no window of opportunity for me to use Light of Raze and Revive to actually not let him draw a card. But I'll go ahead and do it here. My top deck once again just a Zeus Alice, not feeling super good. But Light of Raze and Revive. We'll just go ahead and take this out, being mana efficient. And low-key, like, thinking about just playing Youkai next turn just to get 8/8s on the board. I don't feel like, with how this hand is looking, that we're really accelerating to anything. I kind of want my opponent to be a bit more proactive so that my Seal of Lenneth maybe connects a little bit better, but I'm not really liking the idea either of him playing, like, Clockwork Girl into Lancelot and just having 10 counters available and then being able to kill my Zalices while they're just killing on the field. So 4th stone, we're whiffing the blue stone once again. We do play 4 blue stones, and we managed to not find a single one yet. Again, just considering the Youkai Festival, considering what 6 will floating 2 turns in a row really represents to our opponent, and not really thinking too much of it. But again, just kind of going in the tank here thinking, what do we even do? And just saying, pass again seems like the best option. Playing the Zeus Alice is our entire win condition. It's not really something I want to be doing to just play it vanilla. We can't even play it vanilla right here because we're only blue mana, so I don't even know what I'm saying right now. But yeah, we have pretty much no options. The only live card in our hand is a Seal of Lenneth. So the Arondight that our opponent used on our Dark Alice was actually very, very heads up in retrospect. Still not sure if it's correct play every time, but it definitely paid off for him this game for sure. Just stopping me from getting 2 cards deeper. So there's the second Clockwork Girl coming down, and again, just really no response to do anything. No options available to us. Still trying to figure out what our opponent's rune deck's going to be. Obviously, because he's Arthur, we're going to assume there's going to be a maintenance. Because he's played Harvesting Season, we're going to assume that there's Scrap and Build. And because we saw the Makotos as well, obviously. And it's just a matter of like what the other ones could be. Like maybe Master Rune, but probably not. And there's one answer for us. It's Soul Resonance. Gonna go ahead and grab back a Perfect Loki. And again, our hand just doesn't do anything. So we have to let that go and just kind of say, okay, pay 3 mana to wipe our board, I suppose. Soul Resonance into Perfect Loki. And then that's going to be all she wrote for our 4, our like couple Resonators that we have. Of course, he lets it go to my turn. We do find an Atom Seikhart here, so that's pretty useful. So if we can just sit around 2 more turns, we can discard it at end of turn just to get it in the grave and turn our Zeus House online. We finally do find the blue stone, so our Arondights are now alive. We can Arondight the Perfect Loki if our opponent goes for it. Again, just considering like, do I play Zeus Alice here to make sure that our opponent plays Perfect Loki? Because I'm thinking here that if I had, if he could just be waiting for me to play something to Perfect Loki to commit that extra thing to the board, and he doesn't. Usually, when you play Perfect Loki, you play it before your opponent untaps, so it completely blanks their board and they can't play anything into it. But it's also better to just like wait and then get that +1. So my opponent uses the Perfect Loki here. I'm going to identify that this Atom Seikhart needs to be in my discard zone, so I'm going to use Acolyte and the Stone of Omniscience to play Power of Immortality on my Dark Alice. Dark Alice is gonna. I'm also gonna float 1 white off of the other Acolyte, just so we have that floating. Dallas is gonna come back. She's gonna die immediately, but she is gonna get her enter. I'm gonna get to draw 2 cards. I get to discard my extra Acolyte that I drew there and discard the Atom. So now the Atom is in my graveyard. Yokai Festival's online. The Zeus Alice in my hand is online, and we get to do some pretty cool things if we can get to that point in the game. The Arondight didn't feel super necessary to waste there on the Perfect Loki. I wasn't super attached to what was going on, and honestly, drawing 2 cards and getting that Atom in my graveyard just felt way better than just trying to keep anything alive. So he wants to swing for 8. We'll take. We'll take 8. We're not. We gained 8 life off of the Whispers of an Angel. Our life total isn't feeling super threatened here. We're not worried about too much. And yeah, just gonna take 4 more from the Clockwork Girl. Not feeling too bad about it. And I think our opponent's kind of thinking about what he wants to do here with what he's got in his hand. So he is gonna play a Vivian. All right. Completely fine by me. Just putting a lot of pressure on the board right now. I would love to see a Perfect Loki of my own. I'm trying to remember if I even have one in this list. I think I'm just sideboarding it. I have to double check what the deck is. And I do have the deck list in the description of the video if you want to check, but in terms of right now, I am too stupid to remember off the top of my head. Uses the Dramaturgy Stone to just add a counter, and Vivian's a decent counter to most of the things that Atom Seikhart wants to do. Obviously, the win condition for the deck is typically going to be the Zeus Alice, so our opponent just wants to get as many counters on the Vivian as possible, so that if I do play Zeus Alice or play Yokai Festival, he can just tap them down and call it a day. So he's just going to go ahead and hit us a bunch. We'll draw a card, call a stone. Another Kaguya. We don't play any green stones in this deck, so we need Dark Alice for the Kaguyas in our hand to be live. We only play 3, I think, total in this list, so kind of unfortunate to draw 2 when we were looking for much, much more important cards. So here with 3, 4, 5, 6 available, our opponent has 3 stones, and we know that he likely has maintenance. We know that with maintenance, if we only play our 1 Zeus Alice in our hand, it's very likely that our opponent will maintenance the Vivian and then just tap down our 1 Zeus Alice. We won't get any life, and then we'll take 14 plus 12, 16, like 20 on the crackback, right? So just not looking super good. So we go ahead and throw down the Yokai Festival for 5. Our opponent responds with Kaguya, and then we just Arondight the Kaguya to make sure that our Zeus Alice sticks, because we need that to kind of happen. So we should get to gain at least 10 life here. And our opponent, we're going to go ahead and enter combat and declare an attack, but as you can see in the chat here, our opponent says at the start of combat and does the maintenance. So the maintenance is going to go ahead and put counters on the Vivian. Vivian's going to remove them, and we're going to lose 10 life gain off the Zeus Alice, but we do have indestructible Zeus Alices on the board. Our opponent needs to find some way to get rid of them. In this deck, it's typically going to be a Lancelot. So because I know Lancelot's the way that my Zeus Alices are going to die, I make sure to attack the Clockwork with the most counters, just so that if he plays Lancelot right here, he's only going to go up to 5, 6, 7 counters on the board, so he's going to need other machines. It's still going to be very easy for him to get to a Lancelot that could get enough counters, but I want him to just commit as much of that as possible, because there's nothing I can really do to stop it. So I want to make it more difficult for him than it would be otherwise. But in general, like, this felt like the only play that I could have been making this turn, because I was expecting the maintenance there. Maybe if I had played Seal of Lenneth on the Vivian before playing the Youkai Festival, but then I was going to be vulnerable to the Kaguya, so I needed to use all of my will there, using exactly Youkai Festival and Arondight to be able to make that happen. So he's going to go ahead and call a stone. He actually revealed a Knight of the Round, the edition, off of the Clockwork Girl, and then said it's not a machine, so he puts it to the grave, and then, uses Shadow of Kronos to put it in the grave. But here comes the scrap and build, so here comes the... I assume that he's going to get a Makoto here. I thought like maybe he mulliganed a Makoto, and that's why he waited this long, because now he's got 16 cards in deck. He can reveal 8, and at that point I thought he was like 10 machines or something, but then when he's at 8, it's like, wait, you're not getting into the cards you mulligan, so like you're not hitting Makoto, I guess. So I don't know if he was just waiting on it or what, but he waited till 8, plays scrap and build for 1, and goes ahead and grabs a Vivian, and I was like, well, that's definitely not as scary as it could have been. Even a Lancelot was like what I was really expecting there, but Vivian is pretty good still, because as long as you put more counters on it, he's going to be able to tap down my Zeus Alices. But because the Vivian came down instead of the Lancelot, I'm feeling like at this point my Zeus Alices might actually live to see another day, and I know if they just get to stick around a little bit longer, I should be able to just get to a point where I'm stabilizing. Like gaining 20 life a turn and also killing 2 Resonators a turn is just really strong. And I'm about to play a 3rd Zeus Alice. I've got Seal of Lenneth. I've got Arondight. Like I'm feeling a lot better about this game once that scrapping build is kind of out of the way and not doing a whole lot. Donut Drone doesn't feel super good though, because that's gonna make the Vivien just have so many counters that it could tap down potentially all 3 Zeus Alices. So that's just really bad. I have to, like, my play right now is gonna have to be like Seal of Lenneth it, and then, you know, see what he does. But there's a Lancelot, and I'm like, all right, well, if he just before untap wipes my board, now I get no inner abilities for the rest of the turn. My Zalices are dead. Everything feels bad. At this point, I'm kind of thinking that I lose the game if my opponent plays it correctly. So we just kind of let the game play out to see like what my opponent does. He hits me with everything, which is obviously correct. Just puts me down to, I think, 4 here or 6. No, it doesn't swing with the Vivien. Oh, can't swing with the Vivien. Doesn't swing with the Shadow of Kronos, so just misses 4 damage. Wants to use the Shadow of Kronos ability. So I make sure to announce all of my triggers here. I get a follow. I'm offline, by the way, but I got a follow like in the middle of it, so that was kind of cool. Thank you, Quantum Physics X, for the follow. So yeah, we make sure to announce that we went to recover, and because my opponent didn't like use priority at all, we just get to use Zeus's Grand Lightning on the Vivien and take off 9 of his counters before he gets to really do anything with it. So that was very fortunate for us. A slight mistake from our opponent. He just forgot that Zeus's Grand Lightning was still on the table, I think. So I call a stone. Yeah, I don't need my Stone of Omniscience anymore. I don't ever need runes that are off color. So now it's like, okay, well, he's got 1 Vivien tap. What's the most efficient way for me to remove as much damage as possible and try and stabilize? I go to combat just to force the Vivien and see if he, you know, remembers pretty much. But I probably would be swinging at either the Vivien or the Lancelot. The Vivien can block the Lancelot, which is kind of annoying. And he still is like threatening lethal. He has just 15 on board between the Perfect Loki and the Kaguya, so we've got a lot of stuff. He just has a lot of options available for damage. And like there's still a bunch, like there's still Lancelots in his deck. You know, there's still potentially Makotos. So I just say, all right, well, go back to main. I don't really need to attack here. But then I think I decide to attack anyway, because it's just like I could play the other Zeus Alice here. It's just a matter of sequencing, and then we say, you know what, we'll attack the Lancelot. See what our opponent does. Just looking at our stones here, we got 5 available. That gives us Zeus Alice plus leave open Arondight. Power of Immortality. That's, yeah. All right. So in order to beat the Power of Immortality, we're going to have to use the Arondight here on the Power of Immortality trigger. That has to happen, right? Otherwise, he gets 2 counters on the Vivien. He gets up to 3 counters on Clockwork Girl. I mean, it just gets pretty dicey at that point, so we don't want to let that happen. So we'll use the Arondight. So now with 4 available, we've got Zeus Alice pretty much guaranteed to come down. And then for that last will, it's a matter of, okay, do we want to use Guinevere? Do we want to try and draw more cards to stabilize? Do we want to use Misty Woods, or do we want to use Seal of Lenneth? And with our attack here, what's our target, right? We know that if he has a Makoto in hand, like he drew an extra one, we're dead from 24, and we're dead from like 39 because he's got 15 on board. Even if I use Seal of Lenneth to take out one of those, to take out the Perfect Loki, for example, it's 8 damage, so 21 is going to be lethal. So the Vivien is like the most. So if we take out the like Perfect Loki and the Kaguya instead of the Vivien, then the Vivien hits for 4. Any machine he plays, including the Makoto, would be 5. So it'd be 29. It would be 19 on those. And like he just has enough damage to kill us no matter what. So the reason we kill the Vivien there is because if he doesn't have Makoto, if he really just only plays 2 in his deck, then killing the Vivien will give us more time to stabilize next turn. We will be able to have more Zeus Alice attacks. But basically what I'm saying is that we were dead to any quickness guy pretty much no matter what. But this way, we're just kind of surviving with as much as possible. And we're not worried about the Kaguya Haiku because he just has way too many cards in his graveyard, I think, even after the scrap and build. Because he harvesting seasoned like 4 cards that weren't machines. So this was I think our best chance at surviving. and just dealing with that. So he attacks for 7, and then he has the Kusanagi, so we insta-concede and get into game 2. So we have a bit more of an idea of what's going on in his deck. It is a machines deck, but it's also like a Perfect Loki Kaguya deck, and those are like super, super scary. But because of the Perfect Lokis and the Kaguyas, we're inclined to say, okay, we want some Loki's Insight in our deck. We think about taking out Guinevere just because we need faster things, basically, and they're just not going to be doing a whole lot for us, and there's just more things we need to put in our deck, but eventually we're like, hold on, Izanami's come out, probably a Seal of Lenneth comes out, just like trying to figure out exactly what the most useless cards in our deck are, and it ends up being like 1 Guinevere, 2 Izanami, and like a Seal of Lenneth for just Light of Raze, or for Loki's Insight, and then 2 Squall the Tengu. Squall the Tengu, of course, is going to help deal with the Makoto, and then with 3 Acolytes on the opener, we're not feeling like we need all 3. I think just 1 usually gets the job done. We really want to, after last game, we really want to find Dark Alice. We really want to find just getting our deck online quicker. I think we just kept a little bit too passively last time. We ended up mulling 4 there. And then just saying, okay, we don't need the Misty Woods. We actually just need like Squall the Tengu, Dark Alice, Atom Seikhart. And every card we mull to get closer to that's better. So we do find a Misty Woods and a Squall. So Misty Woods could get us into the Dark Alice or into the Atom. We already have the Squall, so if we do see a turn 2 Makoto, we have a bit of options to beat that. And again, just going to start with the Whispers of the Angel at the beginning of the turn, because that's just like the good thing to do. Oh, and Perfect Loki does find its way in here. I think it was mained. I didn't see a slide it in, so that should be in our main deck, yeah. So that's just like good things all around. Play a Misty Woods. And we see Dark Alice and Atom Seikhart, and it's never a good idea. It's never fun to like try and think about like which one we want more. It's like, oh man, like, do we put the Dark Alice on bottom, and then if we do that, we draw more Atoms, we feel kind of dumb. Or if we put the Atoms on bottom, then we draw more Dark Alice, so it feels kind of dumb. But I think in general, just picking the Dark Alice, if the numbers in your deck are still equal, is always correct, because Dark Alice will draw you cards to find more cards, and then you'll just have a better chance all around. So we do have double Acolyte opener once again. And now with the Dark Alice in our hand, Arondight available, like we just kind of pass with those colors available to make sure that we have as much like responsive options as possible. It's still pretty likely we end up getting turn 2 Makoto'd here, but because we have Dark Alice, we just need to draw into an Atom, hopefully, and then we have Squall the Tengu to be able to kill it, which is good usually most of the time. So he has Shadow, he has Harvesting Season. Let's see what he does. Vivian, not Harvesting Season, so that's good. And now that we're thinking about it, it's like, okay, we saw his deck game 1. We know that he can play a much more mid-range game very, very easily. So if he wants to get on board a little bit faster and just kind of hang on for the turn 2, like he doesn't need a turn 2 Makoto. And when we have like double will open like this, I don't know if he's like worried about something that I couldn't even do, like somehow discarding a Kaguya and then Misty Woodsing it back or something. But he's going to play a little bit safe and just like kind of build a board and say, all right, you need to respect the fact that I could just pop a Makoto out of my deck at any time, but I don't have to worry about that right now. So I go for the Dark Alice, and once again, he commits to just not letting me get those triggers to resolve. And I say, sure. Again, I think that Arondight's a super valuable resource for like the Kaguyas of this deck. So using it in the Dark Alice just feels a bit greedy to me. I think that like if I have more Dark Alices, I just have so many ways to get my discard triggers going that it's just not correct to use that valuable of a resource, especially with Energize, on something like that. That's just my opinion, but my opponent has very clearly committed to that line multiple times this match so far. So going on, he's going to be super, super dedicated to this line we've been talking about. So he uses maintenance to put counters on Vivian to then tap down the Guinevere so I don't have the ability to use its effect to draw 2 and then discard 1. He really just does not want me getting this Atom Seikhart online. And I think at this point, like, that's okay. I'm like, all right. I mean, you got it, boss. I really just don't know if that's correct, and I just felt like this was a little bit greedy from him, and I would have been very surprised if it ended up working out for him. But it did game 1, so by the skin of his teeth, he ended up getting there with the quickness off of the Makoto hardcast. So definitely a line that I think I need to look at more and kind of think about, but we're still going here. No worries. So our opponent's going to pay 1 to do something. Harvesting Season. There we go. Only hits, I think, 4 machines if I looked at that. Yeah, only 3 machines. So nowhere near Makoto, but it does kind of give me like more of an idea of what his deck is. And we saw the white blue the white blue sword art in his discard zone now. So he has more outs to Zeus Alice. So that's something that we get to keep in mind a little bit more proactively, having seen that. So our opponent now swings, Vivian into Guinevere. So he's like exhausting 4 damage, the maintenance, everything, just to make sure that I am not discarding anything ever. And I'm just like, wow, like that's like you are so ambitious about it. But hey, I mean, it's definitely working because that was like my last discard trigger. And I'm like, okay. So we just take 4 and then no attack from Shadow of Kronos and says pass. Now we have to respect Perfect Loki. He did Harvesting Season vanilla without like doing any follow-up. So we're saying, okay, there's probably a Perfect Loki coming out sometime soon. But because we're floating 4-will here, and because we didn't see any additions in his deck that scared us in game 1, we just used the Dispel proactively to gain 10 life. There's an argument to be made that we should save it for after the Atom flip, just to get more Atom triggers, but I just think that the Dispel there to gain life, with how close last game was, even when my opening felt extremely poor, I just think that the extra 10 life there is a nice safety net where I might not get time to play it later. We saw on my turn 6 last game, I was tapping out, so I thought that just getting that out of the way seemed good. So we're going to take our Dark Alice and swing into his Clockwork Girl. And what this does is make him block it with the Shadow of Kronos, or else I just get to let it die and then use the Misty Woods to bring it back. And this is going to turn all of my nonsense online. He has the opportunity to Arondight again here, but I'm just like, if he has another one, I'm just like, all right, bro, you got it. And I'm feeling like I've already got enough value out of these mana dorks. We're getting to the mid game, and I think the cards in my hand are a bit more valuable than anything else. So our opponent wants to Perfect Loki. And I'm like, is that after that resolves? Like, I've already started resolving the effect, but it's untapped. Like, things get a little bit lost in translation sometimes. So I'm like, all right, I'll go ahead and rewind it. But I'm pretty sure is it worth Arondighting that? I don't think I Arondight it. I think I just let it go. Because there's no reason not to, unless I really want to play something like a Zeus Alice this turn, which isn't unheard of. Using the Arondight's just a little bit. Yeah, we'll throw it out there. Because it keeps my Dark Alice in the field so that I have perfect mana, so I have Kaguya available next turn. And just like having the tempo from Kaguya just, it feels super, super good. So because I'm going to have Kaguya guaranteed, letting the Perfect Loki stick seems fine. And then we can actually play our own Perfect Loki if we want to. This feels really good because we've already dealt 4 damage to the Clockwork Girl because of our attack earlier. We've only got 4 cards in our graveyard, so Perfect Loki to basically wipe out his entire board except for the Perfect Loki that just came out. Just kind of takes the clock off of us, but also takes off his mana fixing. So it's going to take away his black mana and his green mana. We've already seen a lot of what his deck is. It's March of the Dead, it's Perfect Loki, it's the Kaguya. So getting him off of both of his mana dorks just seems way better in this against this specific matchup than I would normally prioritize it. So that's kind of why I went for that Perfect Loki play. And then we still have the one available. So if he tries to like use a removal card to like just yeet our Dark Alice or our Perfect Loki out of the game, or just like play his own Perfect Loki, we can just kind of keep our card advantage up by playing this Dark Alice. So wasn't too worried about what his 4 mana follow-up could be with only like 5 machines in his discard zone. No Makoto's coming down basically, so wasn't feeling too bad. This is just going to be an Arthur, and that's going to like let his card draw happen. He does, I believe, call the Zeus's Grand Lightning again. So that gives him more card draw, and I do want to kind of turn that off as soon as possible. I don't want him drawing too many cards because he does have pretty high value cards overall. He's only playing the good machines. He's playing Perfect Loki's, he's playing Kaguya's. I'm just pretty worried about all of that. So he does try and use the Stranger Sword Art spell on our Dark Alice, so we'll play our own Dark Alice. And then we're like checking graveyard, drew an Atom. Like, do we want to put second Atom in graveyard, or do we want to hang on to it? So we'll just discard the Dark Alice first, since it's perfect information. We know we're getting rid of the Dark Alice every single time. And then with the second discard, it's like, okay, we're not hard casting the Atom anytime soon. Our opponent really isn't the colors to be removing our graveyard or interacting it whatsoever. Like maybe if he brought in like Chant of Tranquility along with Clockwork Girl or Calico Cat, but none of that feels super likely. I think our graveyard's pretty safe. So just throwing away the least useful card feels good. But we keep the Squall because it is the out to the Makoto, which is still on the table. He still has Scrap and Build. So he's swinging 8 into our Acolyte, and our question here is, do we want 6 mana next turn, or do we want to block with our Perfect Loki? And I think like there's a decent argument for both sides. Like the Perfect Loki, now it's already entered the field, just like has already kind of done its thing, but it is representing the most damage, and there are situations where just the damage over time is going to be much more relevant. So I do think that the extra mana from the Acolyte matters more. I want 6 next turn because I have like double Zalice, I have Kaguya, all that kind of stuff. So we make sure to protect it with our Perfect Loki and let it go. So 6 available. We have double Zalice. This seems like a really good time to Youkai. We don't want to draw any more Zeus Alice. We just want to kind of get this out of the way. And I like tapping the Acolyte more often than Stones just because the Acolyte doesn't produce double colors, but because I think 9 times out of 10 we're going to play Kaguya next turn, it's okay to leave open the Acolyte here and just threaten green-white and get that. Like just that's pretty much going to be our play every single time. So we use the Youkai, get the Zalices, and then we have the option of beating up Arthur and going face, or double swinging into Perfect Loki. I think he's got about 17 cards in graveyard here, if I remember. If I hover it, I do, but it's, again, 2 times speed, not really sure. So we go ahead and swing for the Perfect Loki, or the Arthur. Again, just want to cut off the card draw. We're not worried about dying here. This Perfect Loki isn't going to attack into anything that really matters. It's just 8 damage to our face when we're already going to be at like 70 life. So cutting off the card draw seems like the most important thing. Making sure our opponent can't get into Lancelots and stuff like that. And also getting the counters off the board. Because if he just plays a Lancelot next turn along with like a Vivian, that actually is a problem. So that just felt more important than dealing with 20 to the Perfect Loki. I think it's the clean play all around. And just seemed like the best thing I could do. So there's the Scrap and Build. And that seems like it's worth Kaguyaing. I mean, I think he had like 7. He'd finally gotten to 7 machines. I didn't have the will available for the Squall right there. And it's just like, I don't even want you getting a 1 mana. I just don't want you getting 1 mana Makoto. So definitely Kaguya that. Whatever else you do for 4. I wasn't worried about 4 mana last turn. You don't have black. You don't have green. Like your deck is only half online from the cards that I've seen. So hey, if you've got another Arthur or something, go for it. And he does just play the Soul Resonance here for 1. Gonna get back Shadow of Kronos to get another Perfect Loki, it looks like. That seems like, I don't even remember, honestly. Like, I'm sitting here watching it, like, this was like 2 days ago. There was like Friday on the weekend, and I'm like, all right, what's this guy doing? But yeah, Shadow of Kronos seems really good. Again, we sort of identified exactly how dependent his deck is on the mana dorks, and that's kind of why we've been controlling them. And now seeing him prioritize them doesn't surprise us a whole lot. And this is interesting because I was pretty sure he was going to swing 8 at our Acolyte here. But instead he's like, oh yeah, his life total matters. Now it's at like 70. So I get to keep my Acolyte. It's likely that I would have blocked with the Kaguya. I think I have too many cards in the discard zone for Haiku being relevant. Oh, he swings 8 at me and then just Perfect Loki is. Yeah, that makes sense too. I could have blocked, but I was like, if he has Perfect Loki, it doesn't matter either way. So... And then, yeah, our opponent's at 30 life, so we're just like, let's go for his face because we have lethal 3 ways to Sunday. We've got the double Zalice, so he's just, yeah. I don't even finish attacking because it's just like I play it and you concede. Yeah, all right, game 3. So we do manage to squeak that one out. We beat double Perfect Loki. Again, just indestructible Zalice seems really good. And I think there's, like I said, there is kind of merit to our opponent locking off our Dark Alice and our Guinevere so aggressively because we had to do some pretty wild things to actually get our Atom in the graveyard. And then once we did, like, the game was a wash. I think because he doesn't really interact with the graveyard at all, like he can kill our Zeus Alice because he can use Perfect Loki to kill it, and then if he does that, he can interact with our Dark Alice because he can kill Dark Alice with Perfect Loki or Lancelot or whatever, but he's not super good at removing our graveyard. So once the Atom is in the graveyard, my Zeus Alice's turn online, they're very difficult for him to deal with. He's got Lancelot 10 counters, he's got the Faria's Sword Art spell, and that's pretty much it to actually deal with them. So I think aggressively just like keeping them down makes sense, but I don't think his deck is aggressive enough to capitalize on it. And I think maybe he was going for a faster a faster scrapping build to try and get into an earlier Makoto, and then making sure that I don't have Zeus Alice at that point makes a lot of sense. But of course it didn't end up working out for him that way. I did have the Kaguya for the scrap. So we maul the Loki's Insight, again, just looking for Dark Alice, Atom Seikhart. We know that Squall the Tengu is going to keep us alive against Vivian's or Makoto's, and we should be able to kind of get to the mid-game. We actually have answers for Makoto now, so that feels fine. But we really need like the activators for our deck that our opponent has been playing so aggressively around. So no Acolyte this game, means we're just going to Whispers on one, but it's still going to be okay. No Shadow of Chronos for him, just Clockwork Girl. And that's going to be a decent chunk of damage, but nothing that Zeus Alice and Whispers of the Angel won't fix. But we are seeing double Kaguya again. Not exactly ideal when we don't have our actual combo pieces. It is one of like the greedier parts of the deck, just playing Kaguya with no greenstones. But when it works, it's insane. When it doesn't, you're just like, beans. That sucks. Bluestone? That's not a bluestone. We could have energized for Loki's Insight here after he draws. I don't know if that feels good. It feels better than a lot of things. Yeah, I'm not surprised I'm taking my time thinking here. Even at 2 times speed, it's just like, alright, what's the most efficient thing to do? Grand Lightning the Vivian? Okay. So the reason that I'm Grand Lightninging, right? And this may seem really, really weird, but I have a lot of removal in the deck between Seal of Lenneth and Light of Raze and Revive. With this 2, I've decided consciously that I'm not going to use Loki's Insight, because by keeping 8 cards in my hand, I'm going to discard Atom Seikhart. So then I'm going to be using 2 mana. I can either pass and then energize a Loki's Insight on my opponent's turn, or I can be mana efficient, get the Vivian off the board now, which is an actually problematic card because Zeus Alice is stopped by the Vivian counters. Because I have more removal in the deck, I felt like, you know what, we'll save the Loki's Insight, we'll just use the Grand Lightning now to be tempo efficient, and then we'll move on from there with the Seikhart in our graveyard reliably, because we've watched our opponent very aggressively stop our Dark Alices and our Guineveres and stuff. And right now we don't even have any Dark Alices or Guineveres, so Atom in the graveyard's a priority. The question here is play Zalice and then immediately get hit by the Vivian tap down from maintenance, and then if our opponent has Lancelot on 4, we don't have the extra blue source to hold open Arondight. To stop the ETB giving everything counters. So it's like, okay, we're not using Dark Alice here. We're not energizing Raze and Revive. Again, holding the Energize is just pretty valuable, but pass Loki's Insight seems like a play, and then we still have Energized Raze and Revive if he plays anything scary. So here's double Sacred Waveblade, double Arondight. And knowing that Zeus Alice is like the win condition, Arondight's kind of annoying, especially with my hand having Kaguya and Perfect Loki. But the Waveblade is like very clearly the scariest, the one of his only answers to Zeus Alice. So the Insight there is going to take both Waveblade, get those out of the way. And now that we know what's in his hand, we've got really solid information on what's going on here. Like, he does not have a lot more like gas in the tank in terms of threats. So if we kill this Vivian or get these Clockwork Girls off the field, like, this is going to be a wash. So Vivian's the only thing he has left that is stopping our Zeus Alice from running rampant on his face. So we'll energize the Raze and Revive there to take out the Vivian. Again, not something I was really planning on doing, but now that I have perfect information, it just seems like very obviously correct. And we want to make sure that a Lancelot doesn't like kind of ruin our day. So Zeus Alice is definitely going to be the play. But there is an argument here actually for just like playing the Misty Woods and not holding open or not playing Zeus Alice. It's kind of an argument, but like, let's see what we get, right? If we hit like a Dark Alice, then it's like, ooh, that's pretty good. And now we're just gonna let him pick what the order is, but getting the Dark Alice feels really strong. And I think it's okay to just play Zeus Alice here no matter what. Oh, he thought I was actually playing the Dark Alice. I'm just getting it to my hand. I was asking for the order on my, because it's like a random order to put the cards back, so there's no way to do that on tap. You have to ask your opponent for like a 1, 2, 3, and then you just kind of put them back in that order. And then the more math I did, I'm like, wait, is there really anything I need to Arondight here, or can I just go ahead and use the Zeus Alice? And of course, because the Lancelot top deck is the scariest thing, there's a, like, I have Dark Alice, so next turn I do get Youkai. And then it's like, okay, do I kill a Clockwork Girl and then lose to a top deck Lancelot, or do I just go face and set up lethal? Because lethal here is just He can't really kill the Zalice unless he top decks exactly exactly Lancelot. And he's only got one machine in his discard zone and no access to black for harvesting season. So he could swing into my Zeus Alice and put 3 machines in grave for Lancelot with scrap and rebuild, but he would need to have top decked another machine to do that. So I think setting up the lethal here was like just a little bit better and not giving him any more turns. So he goes ahead and hits my face, knowing that he can't block and knowing that he's not going to. But with no other like machine stuff going on, his runes are all pretty dead. Maintenance didn't look like a good option there. He doesn't have black for his Power of Immortality or his harvesting season, so he's going to draw 1 card and do absolutely nothing. And now it's like, okay, if I Dark Alice Youkai Festival, I snap win the game, but what if he top decks Kaguya? Like, what if, right? He has the green-white available. So if I go Dark Alice into Youkai Festival and he just Kaguyas that, and then he top decks Lancelot, then things get really, really weird. Because he actually kills my Zeus Alice. I've lost my Youkai, and I need like a couple top decks to actually like get back into the game from that point. So I go face. He stops a drain trigger. He's, keeping my life total in check. Trying to find his own lethal. If he finds like a Makoto or something, he knows that like making sure that my life total is reasonable is like good. I still think that's a little bit weird doing on the drain triggers. I think he should kind of be going for the like card advantage grind. Like he's playing Arthur, the Resonator, like for a reason, right? Like I think he should be expecting to win in card advantage. So using the Arondight so liberally on just like a life total trigger just doesn't feel super good. So he like flipped his ruler to look at the J side, and I was like, "Are you judgmenting? You're a madman." So we end up not doing anything. We have Dark Alice into Kaguya into Perfect Loki, so we have like a lot of things available to like just stop him from being able to do anything, right? Like we can stop the Kaguya, or sorry, words are hard. We've got 2 Kaguyas in our hand. He has 2 cards in his hand. We have Misty Woods on the table, plus a Kaguya in our graveyard, plus a Kaguya in our hand. So we have 2 cancels to his 2 cards. Like we've got them locked down completely. We're still worried about like a potential Kaguya, right? Because now we can play Dark Alice at end of turn, we can recover, and then we have Youkai plus Kaguya. So even if he top decked the Kaguya that we were worried about a turn ago, we can beat that. And he's paying 1, thinking about paying 1. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of like the reason I went for that line, which is making sure that I'm playing around exactly Kaguya, because that was the only card I was especially like worried about losing to if it was exactly Kaguya top deck into exactly Lancelot. But for the most part, once like resolved the Loki's insight, the game was over. Like I had the win as long as I played it correctly. So that's kind of what we were just being safe and going for. So with 2 open, play the Dark Alice. Why not? Gonna go ahead and like we've gotten through both the Arondights now, right? He did use them on the drain trigger. We draw Atom off the top because why not? Draw a second card. Not too worried about second Perfect Loki. Like it's not really doing anything for us. So we go ahead and Perfect Loki his stuff at the end of the turn, because why not? Just get he can't play the cards he gets off of those anymore, and we want the green off the table. So if he did top deck Kaguya, he either has to Kaguya now or he can't do it next turn to the Youkai. So it's basically guaranteeing lethal by playing this Perfect Loki because he attacked. So he reveals Clockwork Girl Lancelot, no big deal. Go to recover, and then call Stone, and then Youkai is going to be the game. So we attack with Kaguya first because why not? 7 damage. But yeah, moral of the story is he did top deck Kaguya on that fateful turn that I played around it, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, this is going to be just lethal because it's 21 damage with this Kaguya and the Zeus Alice. We still have the Youkai available if we need it, but do you really have the Kaguya? Because I'm like, that's crazy. I did tell him he doesn't have green mana available. But yeah, but he had the Kaguya off of the top deck. We played around it and we got there. So that was the match, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you hanging out. Ryan effin Miles is my everything if you want to find me on YouTube, Twitch, and all that. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. And until next time, good luck with your games and take it easy.